So picture this scenario for a second. You are standing in this really crowded room. Maybe it's a dinner party with your closest friends, or, I don't know, a networking event. And across the room is your partner.
Right.
And they are just holding court. I mean, everyone is laughing at their jokes. People are leaning in, completely captivated by them. To the outside world, this person is universally adored. They're perceived as sensitive, deep. Maybe they play that self-sacrificing nice guy role. Or the incredibly misunderstood soul who has, finally found their true anchor in you.
Oh, absolutely. The perfect partner.
Exactly. It looks like an absolute fairy tale, but you are sitting there feeling like all the oxygen is being slowly, methodically vacuumed out of the room. Your heart is racing, your stomach is in knots, you are terrified to speak up or even join the conversation because you don't know what invisible tripwire you might cross.
Yeah.
You're walking on eggshells, constantly confused, and quietly, desperately wondering if you are actually losing your mind.
It is a profound state of cognitive and physiological dissonance. I mean, the reality your nervous system is processing completely contradicts the reality the rest of the world is seeing in that room.
Which is terrifying.
It really is. Your body is signaling a mortal threat, right? But your social environment is signaling safety and charm. And that split, that exact disconnect is what makes this specific dynamic so entirely crazy-making.
I've heard from so many people who have lived this, and it brings us to this paradox that outsiders almost never understand. And this is the core mystery we really have to dismantle today in this deep dive. Why is it that the most intelligent, driven, emotionally attuned people, the researchers, the executives, the highly empathetic caregivers, why are they so often the ones who stay the longest in relationships that actively destroy them?
That's the question everyone asks.
Right. Why does knowing all the facts or being able to intellectually name the abuse somehow not make leaving any easier?
Because we assume that if you are smart enough to see a trap, you can just, walk out of it.
Exactly.
But you cannot simply think your way out of a neurobiological hijack. What you're describing isn't a failure of intelligence. It certainly isn't a lack of willpower. It is a highly predictable, biologically hardwired response to a very specific manufactured environment.
So it's basically your body doing its job.
Exactly. The body is essentially doing exactly what it evolved to do to survive. It's just doing it in a context that is actively harming it.
So we need a psychological roadmap here.
Yeah.
Because today we are taking this massive stack of clinical research, affective neuroscience, behavioral psychology, and attachment theory, and we are dismantling the invisible architecture of covert narcissism and the trauma bonds it creates. We aren't just looking at the surface level bad behavior or, the typical red flags you read about on blogs.
Right. We have to go deeper than that.
Way deeper. We are going into the exact biological and psychological mechanisms of why this happens, how it alters your actual brain chemistry, and why the trap was so beautifully designed that you couldn't see it until it closed around you.
And for anyone listening right now who has ever wondered why you can't just leave or why you physically ache for a person who systematically dismantled your self-esteem, I mean, the science we are going to explore today is going to reframe everything for you.
It really is.
You are not broken. You experienced a neurochemical hijacking. Your nervous system was held hostage by someone who hacked your deepest attachment drives.
And to understand the trap, we first have to understand the architect of the trap.
Yeah.
We have to completely throw out the pop culture stereotype of the narcissist.
Oh, please, yes. We have to throw that out.
Because when we hear that word, the image is immediate.
Yeah.
Right? It's the loud, boastful CEO type, the person taking selfies, dominating the boardroom, demanding the spotlight, the overt narcissist. But the covert narcissist is operating on a totally different frequency.
Right. But the clinical pathology is the same, which is what confuses people so much.
Okay, wait, how is it the same?
Well, the core of narcissistic personality disorder is always grandiosity, a lack of empathy, and an insatiable need for admiration, what we call narcissistic supply in the clinical world. But the strategy to extract that supply is entirely inverted here.
Oh, I see.
Overt narcissists lead with dominance, status, aggression. Covert or vulnerable narcissists, they lead with sensitivity, victimhood, and this quiet, simmering sense of superiority. They don't demand the spotlight by shouting about their greatness. They demand it by suffering loudly.
Wow. It's like, I was thinking about this earlier, it's like walking through the woods actively looking out for a wolf. You have your guard up for teeth and claws, you know what to look for. But a covert narcissist isn't a wolf baring its teeth. It's someone who walks up to you showing you their own bite marks.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Right. They look wounded. They tell you how the pack abandoned them. And so you lean in to help them, to bandage them up, and that is the exact moment you get caught. How does this martyr persona function as camouflage?
It functions by weaponizing your own empathy. I mean, the covert narcissist operates from what psychoanalysts call a false self. See, the grandiose narcissist often genuinely believes their own hype.
They think they really are the best.
Exactly. The covert narcissist, however, is plagued by high neuroticism, profound emotional instability, and this chronic, deep-seated insecurity. They are terrified of being exposed as ordinary or worthless. So they construct this highly calibrated false self that pulls for care and protectiveness from others.
Like drawing you in to save them.
Right. They tell you things like, I give and it's never enough, or, no one has ever truly understood my heart.
And if you're a caring person, your immediate knee-jerk response is, well, I will be the one to understand you. I will be the one who finally treats you right. You essentially take it on as a project.
You step right into the role they designed for you. And the research on attachment theory here is incredibly revealing. There was a major meta-analysis published in Personality and Individual Differences that looked at the correlation between narcissism and adult attachment styles.
And what did they find?
They found that grandiose narcissism doesn't have a strong link to insecure attachment. They kind of avoid attachment altogether. But vulnerable covert narcissism is powerfully linked to insecure attachment styles, specifically preoccupied and fearful attachment.
Wait, so they actually do want connection, unlike the overt narcissist who just wants an audience.
They want it desperately, but they are terrified of it. Preoccupied and fearful attachment styles are characterized by a chronic, agonizing fear of abandonment mixed with a desperate need for external validation, just to prop up a fragile ego.
That sounds exhausting.
It is, because intimacy requires vulnerability. True vulnerability risks exposure, which risks rejection. And to a fragile ego, rejection feels like psychological annihilation. So they extract their narcissistic supply not by being the strongest in the room, but by being the most wronged, the most sensitive, the most misunderstood. They control the dynamic through pity and obligation.
I mean, the most dangerous manipulation you'll ever encounter doesn't look like control. It looks like a plea for your care, which completely explains why the beginning of the relationship doesn't feel like a trap at all.
Not at all.
If this person leads with vulnerability and a plea for understanding, it feels like a movie. It feels like you have finally found someone who is safe. The literature calls this covert love bombing.
The idealization phase, yes. With an overt narcissist, love bombing is extravagant. Expensive dinners, grand gestures, sweeping you off your feet. But with a covert narcissist, it is a quiet, incredibly intense psychological grooming process based on extreme mirroring.
Mirroring is fascinating to me because on the surface, they aren't just being nice. They are actively studying you.
Yes, they are essentially running a data collection campaign. It feels like profound empathy, but it is actually attunement in the service of control.
Attunement in the service of control. Wow.
They study your values, your ambitions, your childhood wounds, your unmet needs. If you mention offhand that you love, I don't know, some obscure poet, they will spend the entire night reading everything about that poet so they can come back the next day and claim it's their favorite too.
So they present a mirrored version of themselves that flawlessly answers everything you have ever wanted in a partner.
Exactly.
But I have to pause on that because I can hear people thinking right now, isn't finding common ground, being fascinated by each other, and wanting to share interests just what happens when you fall in love? Like if I meet someone and we both love the same obscure poet, I'm going to be thrilled. How do you tell the difference between a genuine honeymoon phase and this kind of neurobiological setup?
That's the critical question. And the distinction lies in the pacing, the boundaries, and the depth of the reflection. Genuine connection moves at a sustainable pace. It actually allows for differences.
Like it's okay if we don't agree on everything.
Right. If you tell a healthy partner you need a night to yourself, they respect it. A love bomber will manufacture a crisis, or guilt trip you, or subtly punish you for creating that distance. Furthermore, mirroring isn't just shared interests. It's an uncanny, accelerated reflection of your core identity. It is designed to secure your attachment before you have gathered enough objective data to know if they are actually safe.
It's rushing the process.
Yes, and it always involves intense future faking.
Planning a life together almost immediately. Moving in, getting married, having kids, all discussed in the first few weeks.
They are building a shared fantasy, and what's happening to the victim on a biological level during this phase is where the trap really sets. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist, has done incredible functional MRI research on the brain in the early stages of intense romantic attachment.
And what happens in the scanner?
She found that the brain in this stage is neurologically indistinguishable from a brain on cocaine.
You are literally high.
You are flooded with dopamine, the reward and anticipation neurotransmitter, and oxytocin, the bonding hormone. And this massive chemical cocktail does something very dangerous. It actively suppresses the functioning of your prefrontal cortex.
Which is the logic center.
Exactly. That is the part of your brain responsible for critical thinking, logic, risk assessment, red flag detection. You cannot see the warning signs because your brain's alarm system has been biochemically shut down by the euphoria of the love bomb.
So your brain encodes this person as your ultimate source of reward and safety. The attachment is secured. The roots are deep. And that is exactly when the pivot happens, doesn't it?
That's when the pivot happens.
The idealization phase ends,
Right.
and the devaluation phase begins. And from what I've read in the sources, this isn't a sudden explosion of physical rage or overt verbal abuse. The shift is agonizingly subtle. I always pictured it like the temperature in the room dropping by exactly 1 degree every single day. You are slowly freezing to death. But because there was no sudden blizzard, you think the problem is just that you aren't wearing a warm enough sweater. You blame yourself for the cold.
Ambient devaluation is the perfect term for that. The warmth is simply withdrawn. Instead of overt insults, you get subtle digs, passive-aggressive comparisons, the silent treatment, manufactured misunderstandings. Suddenly, the person who hung on your every word now rolls their eyes when you speak, or sighs heavily when you walk into the room.
What is the trigger for that shift, though? Because for the victim, it feels completely random. One day you are their soulmate, the next day you are an annoyance.
The trigger is inevitably that you, the target, assert your separate identity.
Oh.
You express a different opinion on a movie, you set a boundary around your time, or you simply have an emotional need of your own that doesn't serve them in that moment. In the covert narcissist's mind, they didn't attach to a separate human being. They attached to a mirror that was supposed to constantly reflect their idealized self back to them. When you act like an autonomous person, the mirror shatters.
And to a fragile ego, that autonomy is a massive threat.
It causes a narcissistic injury. It
Yep.
threatens them with the deep internal shame they carry. And to protect themselves from that shame, they must project it outward. They have to punish you and reassert control to stabilize their own psyche. So they tell you, you're too sensitive, or you've changed, you aren't the person I fell in love with.
Which is incredibly destabilizing. Because there are no visible bruises. There's no single event you can point to and say, that was abuse. You can't call the police because your partner sighed at you.
Right.
How does this specific type of ambiguity paralyze the victim?
Well, it creates a state of chronic, low-grade disorientation. Your mammalian nervous system is constantly humming with threat. It senses the withdrawal of attachment, which to a mammal equals death. But your cognitive brain has no proof of the danger.
Because you start to doubt yourself.
Exactly. So you start to overanalyze every single interaction. You try to perfect your own behavior, thinking if you can just get back to being the perfect partner you were during the love bombing phase, the warmth will return.
And this brings us to the core of this whole phenomenon. The reason why highly intelligent, capable people stay. Outsiders look at this and think, well, if someone treats you coldly, just leave. But the devaluation doesn't break the bond. Paradoxically, it cements it.
It absolutely cements
It creates the trauma bond.
Sure.
Let's talk about the behavioral science here, specifically B.F. Skinner and intermittent reinforcement.
Intermittent reinforcement is the most powerful behavioral conditioning pattern known to science. B.F. Skinner demonstrated this with rats. If you press a lever and get food every single time, you only press it when you're hungry.
Makes sense.
If you press it and never get food, you start pressing it entirely. But if you press the lever and get food unpredictably, sometimes on the first press, sometimes on the 50th, you will become obsessed. You will press the lever until you collapse.
The slot machine effect. The unpredictability is the hook.
In the relationship, the covert narcissist runs hot and cold. The unpredictability of their warmth returning creates a hyperactivated state in what effective neuroscientist Jack Panksepp calls the brain's seeking system. Your brain becomes entirely focused on solving the pattern to get the reward.
Yeah. Mechanically, what is happening in the body during this hot and cold cycle? Like when they withdraw, give you the silent treatment, and then suddenly return.
When the covert narcissist withdraws, your dopamine levels crash. Simultaneously, cortisol, the stress hormone, floods your system. You experience literal physical withdrawal.
Like a drug addict.
Exactly like that. Your chest is tight, you can't sleep, you feel a profound sense of panic. Your body feels like it is in mortal danger because your primary attachment figure has become hostile. Then, the narcissist throws you a breadcrumb. They give you a fleeting moment of the old warmth, a text message saying, "I miss us," a tender look, maybe a fake apology.
And your brain just lights up.
You get a massive dopamine spike against a backdrop of cortisol-drenched distress. The relief is so profound it registers as euphoria. And the transformative insight here is this. You are not actually addicted to the abusive person. You are addicted to the relief from the pain that they themselves caused.
Wow.
Your brain has cross-wired. It has encoded the source of your danger as your only means of survival and soothing.
You are addicted to the relief from the pain that they caused. I mean, that reframes everything. But I have to ask the burning question.
Go ahead.
If you are a logical person and your cognitive mind knows this person is bad for me, this relationship is toxic, why can't logic override the chemistry? Why can't you just pack a bag and leave?
Because, as psychiatrist Dr. Bessel van der Kolk details in The Body Keeps the Score, the trauma bond is stored in the body. It is housed in the mammalian nervous system, the limbic system, which operates entirely beneath conscious logic.
So your logic center is basically offline.
Your prefrontal cortex, your logic center, knows it's toxic. But your limbic system, your survival center, believes that severing this attachment equals literal death. Leaving doesn't feel like a healthy life choice. To your nervous system, leaving feels like stepping off a cliff into the abyss. You are fighting millions of years of evolutionary biology that tells you to cling to your attachment figure when you are terrified.
And while the body is being held hostage by this biochemical slot machine, the mind has to somehow cope. You still have to wake up, go to work, and function in society. The mind has to build a fortress of illusions just to survive the day-to-day reality of being abused by someone you love.
This is where we see profound psychological immune responses. The victim engages in extreme logical gymnastics just to tolerate the reality they are in. And the most prominent mechanism here is cognitive dissonance.
Which was coined by Leon Festinger in the 1950s, right? It's the psychological stress experienced by a person who holds two or more contradictory beliefs or values simultaneously.
Yes. The contradiction is, this person is my soulmate and loves me, versus this person is systematically destroying me. The human mind cannot tolerate that level of dissonance. It literally causes psychological pain. So the mind actively alters reality to reduce the tension.
How does it do that?
In an abusive dynamic, the easiest way to resolve the tension is to take the blame. If I'm in the problem, if I am just too sensitive, then the relationship isn't broken. It's under my control, and I can fix it by trying harder.
It's a survival mechanism to regain a sense of agency.
Exactly.
And it's compounded by the covert narcissist's gaslighting. Gaslighting isn't just someone lying to you. It's a systematic dismantling of your reality. You start to doubt your own memory as a reliable instrument. So the dissonance is nested. Did they hurt me, or did I imagine it? If I can't trust my memory, maybe they really are the good guy they claim to be.
And that leads directly to another survival mechanism called betrayal blindness, a concept developed by Dr. Jennifer Freed. This is a deeply unconscious process where a victim actively suppresses their awareness of the abuse.
They just don't see it.
They literally do not see it, or they instantly forget it after it happens. Why? Because fully acknowledging the betrayal would threaten an attachment that feels essential to their survival. We see this often in childhood trauma, where a child must rely on an abusive parent for food and shelter, so they go blind to the abuse. But it absolutely applies to trauma bonds in adulthood. You go blind to the betrayal because seeing it would destroy your entire world.
It's like your psyche develops an autoimmune disorder. Your mind's defense mechanisms, which are designed to protect you from harm, start protecting the relationship instead, at the expense of your own sanity. Your brain attacks its own reality-testing functions to keep the bond intact.
That is exactly what happens. Another response we see is infantile regression. Under chronic psychological terror and unpredictability, the victim's nervous system regresses to an earlier developmental stage.
Meaning they feel like a child.
You are reduced to a state of dependency, viewing the abuser as a powerful, omnipotent caregiver who must be appeased at all costs just so you can survive. You lose your adult agency.
What is the cumulative effect of all this on the victim's core sense of self? When you are constantly taking the blame, doubting your reality, and regressing to a state of dependency, what happens to the person inside?
It causes the total collapse of what Carl Rogers called organismic valuing.
Organismic valuing, what is that?
Organismic valuing is our innate internal compass. It's our ability to trust our own gut feelings about what is good or bad for us, what feels safe and what feels dangerous. In a covert narcissistic relationship, that compass is smashed.
Because they've been overriding it for so long.
Right, because every time you felt hurt, you were told you were being dramatic.
Mm.
Every time you sensed a lie, you were told you were crazy. Eventually, you can no longer distinguish between what you actually feel and what you have been told you feel. You become completely alienated from your own intuition.
Let's shift to a really crucial part of the puzzle. Who gets targeted? Because there is this pervasive victim-blaming myth that manipulators target weak people or people with low self-esteem or desperate for attention. But the clinical data shows the exact opposite.
It completely shatters that myth. Covert narcissists do not hunt for weakness. They hunt for very specific strengths. Researcher Sandra Brown identifies what she calls super traits. Narcissists target driven, highly empathetic, cooperative, agreeable people with high emotional intelligence and a high tolerance for ambiguity.
They want premium fuel. They want a high-yield source of narcissistic supply, someone who has the stamina to keep giving when getting nothing in return.
But they are also looking for a hidden vulnerability, a blueprint they can exploit. And very often, this goes back to childhood development. Drawing on Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, we can see that the abuse exploits a nervous system adaptation that was already there. Often, the victim grew up in an emotionally unpredictable environment.
An environment where love was conditional, where you had to earn safety by constantly reading the room, managing a parent's mood swings, and suppressing your own needs.
You develop hypervigilance as a childhood survival skill. Polyvagal theory explains how our autonomic nervous system subconsciously scans the environment for safety or danger neuroception. If you grew up in chaos, your nervous system adapted to function within chaos.
So it feels normal to them.
Exactly. So when the covert narcissist introduces this chaotic, hot and cold dynamic, your nervous system doesn't trigger alarm bells, it triggers recognition. To your nervous system, the chaos feels familiar. It feels like home.
And this ties deeply into the trauma response types, specifically the fawn response identified by Pete Walker. I mean, we all know fight, flight, and freeze. If a tiger attacks, you fight it, run away, or play dead. But fawn is different.
Very different. The fawn response is a complex trauma response. It is the compulsive need to appease, accommodate, and anticipate another person's needs to avoid conflict and secure safety. If fawning was installed in your childhood as your primary defense mechanism, you are the perfect supply for a narcissist. You will endlessly give, endlessly forgive, and endlessly take the blame, believing that if you can just be good enough, the abuse will stop.
I found something deeply surprising in the sources regarding who gets targeted. There is a specific vulnerability for autistic women. The data shows they are disproportionately targeted by covert narcissists. Why is that?
It's a vital insight, honestly. Autistic women often possess a very high tolerance for asymmetry in relationships, meaning they're used to doing the heavy lifting in communication. They also tend to assume misunderstanding rather than malice. They operate with intense directness and moral seriousness.
So they assume the covert narcissist is also operating in good faith. If the narcissist says, "I didn't mean to hurt you," the autistic woman takes that statement literally.
Right. An autistic woman is investing heavily in authenticity. But the narcissist is investing entirely in impression management. The narcissist misreads the autistic woman's directness and deep focus as intense devotion, and they exploit her tendency to give the benefit of the doubt.
It's like they're speaking two different languages.
The fundamental languages they are speaking are completely at odds. The autistic woman is trying to solve a communication issue. The narcissist is playing a dominance game. It creates a massive exploitation risk, and the victim doesn't realize it until the trap has sprung.
The deeper lesson here is so validating for anyone who has been through this. Your empathy, your loyalty, your willingness to see the best in someone, your drive to fix things, those were not character flaws. They were beautiful traits that were systematically weaponized against you. You were targeted for your light, not your darkness.
It is a profound realization when a survivor finally understands that their abuser didn't target them because they were worthless, but because they were valuable.
So how does this agonizing loop finally break? Because it doesn't just slowly fade out into a mutual breakup. It usually ends abruptly in a phase known as the discard, only to try and pull you right back in with the Hoover.
The discard phase is brutal. Once the covert narcissist has extracted all the supply they can, or more often, once the victim starts setting too many boundaries and the mirror is too cracked to reflect the false self, the narcissist abruptly ends it. And true to the covert style, it's rarely a clean break with an honest conversation.
It never is.
No, it's often a callous, silent treatment. They vanish or they suddenly replace you, leaving you desperate for answers while they take zero accountability.
But they rarely stay gone.
They almost always return. This is called hoomering, like the vacuum brand. They want to suck you back in. When their new sources of supply fail, or they just want to test if they still own you, they pop back up.
What does that look like?
They come with fake apologies, tears, a sudden crisis they need your help with, and a mini love bombing phase. They'll say, I've changed, I went to therapy, I realized you were the only one who ever loved me. And because the victim's nervous system is starving for that dopamine relief, they get pulled right back into the cycle.
How do you actually break free then? If your brain is physically addicted, how do you stop the cycle?
The absolute golden rule, the only true way out, is no contact. You cannot heal from a neurochemical addiction while you are still in contact with the dealer. You have to block them on every platform, block their friends, and completely remove their access to your nervous system.
But what if you can't? What if you share custody of children or you work in the same department?
If no contact is legally or practically impossible, you employ the gray rock method. You become as boring, uninteresting, and unresponsive as a gray rock.
Just totally flat.
You provide zero drama, zero outrage, zero emotional supply. You keep all communications strictly to fax brief, unemotional text messages about pickup times or project deadlines. You disrupt their emotional reinforcement cycle by giving them nothing to feed on. When you stop reacting, they eventually lose interest and seek supply elsewhere.
But getting them out of your life is only half the battle. You still have the trauma bonds stored in your body. Your nervous system is still hypervigilant.
This is why traditional talk therapy is often not enough for this specific type of abuse. You can talk about the narcissist for years, understand all the clinical terms, and still feel the physical pull in your chest. Survivors need trauma-informed somatic therapies.
Somatic meaning relating to the body.
Yes. Therapies like somatic experiencing, EMDR, or brain spotting bypass the cognitive brain and work directly with the nervous system. You have to heal the underlying attachment wound and literally retrain your nervous system to recognize calm as safe and chaos as danger. You have to relearn how to inhabit your own body.
I hear a lot from people going through this who say, I'm doing the therapy, I'm doing no contact, but I just need closure. I just need one final conversation where they finally admit what they did, where they look at me and say, you're right, I hurt you, I'm sorry. Why is waiting for that closure a trap?
Because a covert narcissist is psychologically incapable of providing closure. Closure requires empathy, self-reflection, and accountability, things they fundamentally lack. If you go to them for closure, they will simply deploy Darvo.
Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Can you break down what that actually sounds like in real life?
It sounds like this. You say, I am hurt that you lied to me about where you were. They deny. I never lied to you. You're remembering it wrong. They attack. You are always so paranoid and controlling, it's exhausting being with you.
Wow.
And then they reverse victim and offender. I only didn't tell you because I was terrified of how you would overreact. You make me feel unsafe. I am the victim of anxiety.
So suddenly you were apologizing to them for being abused.
Exactly. Waiting for closure is just giving them another opportunity to spin the slot machine. You have to accept that the person you met in the idealization phase never existed. It was a projection. Closure is an inside job. It is a door you have to shut yourself from the inside.
We have covered incredible ground today. We have unpacked how covert narcissism uses vulnerability and pity as a weapon. We explored how mirroring and love bombing mimic a soulmate connection to biochemically hijack your prefrontal cortex. We broke down how intermittent reinforcement creates a literal neurochemical addiction to the person hurting you, and how our own psychological immune system, cognitive dissonance, and betrayal blindness blinds us to the abuse just so we can survive.
It is a heavy, complex, and deeply painful journey. But understanding this invisible architecture is the first vital step to dismantling it. If you take nothing else away from this, know this. You are not crazy. You were biologically manipulated. The confusion you feel is the exact intended result of the abuse.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought, something to mull over as you step back into your day and process all of this. We talked extensively about how you poured your immense capacity for love, your fierce loyalty, your hyper-attunement, and your endless benefit of the doubt into a bottomless well. You spent years trying to heal a false self. But the collapse of this false relationship isn't just a tragic ending. It is a profound invitation.
What would happen if you gathered up all of that beautiful, high-value empathy, that relentless loyalty and dedication, and instead of pouring it into someone else's void, you redirected it back into your own intuition?
Imagine if you applied the exact same fierce protectiveness you gave to your abuser to yourself. You have stepped out of the room where the air is thinning. The door is open. Take a deep breath. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.